Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Redmen TV. My name is Dan Clubb, and I'm here with your latest Liverpool transfer news update show. And yeah, things keep ticking along in the world of transfer news when it comes to the Reds. Of course, a couple of weeks ago, we were moving serenely towards the new season with McAllister and Szoboszlai as our new midfielders, and now all of a sudden we could be losing two of them. So what do we do next? Well, hopefully we do some more business, quite frankly. Please let me know in the comments, in the chat, what we're thinking, who we should be signing, etc., etc. I've got one main news story to talk to you about, and we'll touch on a couple of others while we're here as well. But yeah, as things stand, it very much looks like Fabinho is on his way out to Liverpool, and Jordan Henderson could well follow soon after. So yeah, let's have a chat. First and foremost, Bobby Gunn, I brought your comment up nice and early because I know you've shouted at me in the past for missing them. Yeah, and I apologise for the hat, by the way. I wasn't technically supposed to be sitting here right now, but here we are. I still have a feeling it'll be Kimmich as the replacement. Imagine him and Trent interchanging between right back role and a DM and a double pivot. It's the stuff dreams are made of. Yeah, I would love Joshua Kimmich to be a signing for Liverpool this summer. I did see a report, I think it was coming from Kicker, and one of the journalists out there this morning, suggesting that Kimmich and Goretzka could well both be available this summer. So, yeah, I think one of them, if I was going to pick one, it would be Kimmich. But yeah, I think it's interesting that those moves feel to me like you'd have to spend a lot of money to get them out of Bayern, because I think they've described them both as sort of not for sale, but you're probably talking big money, especially for Kimmich and someone of his quality. So, yeah, people saying that Hendo isn't leaving. I've got to have to find this. Louis Peters, a couple of other people have mentioned it as well. I'll just check that in one sec. Why is it whenever I'm sat here, big news drops? I just spoke to Ian Doyle as well a moment ago. Somebody brings up a comment from the Echo here. Actually, David says the Echo reporting no talks for Henderson at present. Yeah, again, it feels as though the Henderson stuff hasn't quietened down. Obviously, he went to Germany as part of the pre-season tour. Remains to be seen if he'll play tomorrow at Karlsruhe. But him agreeing to that deal and then sort of leaving Liverpool and Al-Ittihad to sort of thrash out transfer terms has got a little bit messy. Joseph Gurgis as well. Thank you very much, mate. Appreciate that. Dan the man. It rhymes, but I also appreciate the kind words. Yeah, I'm going to touch on Cheick Doucoure in just a moment, but I will just have a quick look, see if I can find the Henderson. No thanks from Hugh Jackson67. Yeah, anyway, we'll talk about him in a second. Let me just see if I can find this Jordan Henderson stuff, the latest news on him, before I crack on into the show. I'm not going to change the show agenda too much because I don't want to, quite frankly. Nothing on Google about it. I know people said Sky Sports, didn't they? So let's have a look. I can't even see anything on there either. No. Anyway, tell me, please, someone give me a heads up on that if possible. But yeah, as things stand, as far as I'm aware, Henderson still wants to go to Saudi Arabia. What happens in the talks between the club and Liverpool remains to be seen. Joseph Gurgis replies, Florentino Luis's stats look insane. Yes, they do. Again, big money. I think we're talking sort of upwards of like 80 million quid for him from Benfica. So, listen, in terms of Fabinho replacements, he would be ideal. I think stylistically he's very similar. And it's almost like you're watching Fabinho from a few years ago when you're watching him. I think he's 23, so he's of a good age as well to come in and play the role immediately, which I think is something we need right now. Before we go into the options, I think for me, I don't think I've had a chance to speak to everybody on this show since. I think what the Fabinho sale has done, and potentially the Henderson one as well, it's changed our plans completely. It means we can't just go and sign an understudy like a Lavia or a young option, just kind of learn the role of Fabinho and then potentially become Fabinho in a few years' time. It has to be a frontline option. Now, whether that's a stopgap for a year or two, while Pacetic and indeed someone like a Lavia can sort of get minutes and learn and become and develop a better player over time, or whether that's somebody more expensive, like a Florentino Luis, like a Caicedo, for instance, looks like he might go to Chelsea, and somebody can just go, no, there's your man, go and do it. I think the names, I'm not going to touch on them in the show. So the four names that were sort of briefed over the weekend by Melissa Reddy and James Pearce. Calvin Phillips is a big no-no for me. Sofan Amrabat, I'd be okay with, sort of as an immediate replacement for Fabinho. It was Ryan Gravenberch, doesn't play six often enough for me to come and do that job. Would be a good signing, but not as a six. And Romeo Lavia. I think Lavia comes in anyway and just, like I say, watches whoever the frontline six is, but it can't be Lavia. He's too young, he's too inexperienced. You can't replace Fabinho with Romeo Lavia, is what I'm trying to say. Anyway, I'll go through some more comments. John Andrews says, Hendo won't leave, he would be a fool to leave. I think he might. I think he might want to leave, quite frankly. I think he has made his mind up, whether it's based on money, whether it's based on minutes, whatever you want to call it. I think he's very much made his mind up by the looks of things. And it's interesting because a lot of people have said, well, Henderson hasn't said anything amongst all of this. And they're right, he hasn't. He hasn't come out and said, I want to go, whatever. He hasn't sort of forced his hand. But also, the noise around the exit has been going on for long enough now for somebody like him or from his camp to come out and say, no, it's not happening. And the journalists, like, often when we sit here and talk about reports, sometimes they can come from pretty tenuous links. But when it's Paul Jorce, when it's Chris Bascombe, when it's James Pearce, when it's Ian Doyle, when it's Paul Gorst, etc., like, there's more to it than just a little bit of rumour mill stuff. Like, it looks like he wants to go, quite frankly. And it's a shame. It is a shame because whatever you say about him as a player, he's been a terrific servant to Liverpool and he's been a brilliant captain for Liverpool. So it would be a shame for him to go out on those terms, quite frankly. It's not befitting of the player that he's been and the captain that he's been. He deserves a Bobby-esque send-off, in my opinion. Given that he's lifted every major trophy since he's been at the club, since he's been captain. It doesn't feel right that he would just sort of slope off into the sunset and take his big bag of cash in Saudi Arabia. I'm just looking for this tweet from Sky Sports. On Sky Sports Premier League, that probably isn't going to show me, is it, looking at this? Absolutely ideal. Why have Sky Sports got a million different Twitter accounts? That's what I want to know. I'll carry on talking whilst I'm looking. Let me Sky Sports News. I'll try this one, then I'm going to crack on regardless. They've got Brighton have rejected a 70 million bid from Chelsea for Moises Caicedo. Millie Bright about nothing. Not there. Not there. No. Okay. Anyway, let's crack on with the agenda then. Somebody with a very difficult name to pronounce has asked me how to pronounce another very difficult name. So this should be fun. Dovanis Bankatas has asked, how do you pronounce Dominic Szoboszlai? It's tricky. It is tricky. You've also missed one of the Z's in there, which would have made it even trickier. But yeah, it's Dominic Szoboszlai to the best of my knowledge. And even if that isn't correct, that's how I now say it. And that's what I'm sticking with. Yeah. Anyway, a couple of people talk about Louise in there. I'll touch on them in a second. So Anurag Gupta says, nah, man, we ain't buying Doucoure. I would still back buying Lavia. Yeah, I want Lavia, especially if Henderson and Fabinho leave. I think signing Lavia remains a no-brainer in that instance. The only thing we can't sign Lavia to do is come and be the replacement for Fabinho, because that isn't an upgrade. That isn't even staying the same. Like, that is a downgrade, and we're not about downgrades this summer. Like, if we want to get back to anything like our previous successes and anything like the previous team we can't be allowing Fabinho to leave and bringing in, I don't want to say a worse player, I'm reticent to say that, but bringing in a player who's not where Fabinho is in terms of his experience, sort of craft, whatever, like his ability. Like, Romeo Lavia has the potential to be a wonderful, wonderful footballer at the very highest level. He's just 19 and he's just played 30 odd Premier League games. So he's not there yet, quite frankly. Anyway, go for some more comments before I do. Szoboszlai, Corio, and yeah, nicely done. And it's, you know what, actually? Right, okay, Liam Lauren says we'd be a fool to let Henderson go. I think that ship might have already sailed, to be honest with you, mate. And I tend to agree with you. I wasn't sort of enamored with the idea of Henderson leaving when it first got muted earlier last week. I want him to stay because it felt like, not even necessarily solely from a footballing perspective. Now, I know how stupid that sounds, but when you've got someone who can play numerous positions, and I felt like he was going to be happy to sort of act as cover and drop into games as and when was necessary and start the occasional match. But it was losing the leadership, losing the experience, losing the culture of the club in many senses, especially having just lost James Milner. Now, I'm absolutely backing Jurgen Klopp and backing the other leaders amongst our squad to sort of set the standard again if Henderson does go and say, he's gone now, new dawn, clean slate. You know, Virgil van Dijk, Alisson Becker, Mohamed Salah, whoever it is as captain, Andy Robertson. I do back them to set the standards all over again. I've got no qualms about that. But when you've already lost a big leader and a big personality amongst the team, it doesn't feel necessary to definitely lose another one. That's why it felt to me like Henderson should stay. But yeah, anyway, we are where we are now. I've got to go through quick more comments before. Yeah, Aditya, I touched on that just earlier on. You've been hearing Kimmich and Goretzka. Yeah, I think available is a little bit of a stretch. The essence I got from the report that I seen was they're not unsellable for Bayern Munich. Like if good offers come in and offers that they see as adequate, because obviously just signed Conrad Lima, it feels as though they're doubling down on Ryan Gravenberch actually in terms of their plans. So one of them, if they receive good money for one of them, maybe. My preference would be Kimmich in that instance, by the way, as well. But yeah, I haven't actually touched on the actual news I was here to talk about yet, but I will. Revenite FC says, Dan, I think you are right, and I'm also down for Amrabat and Lavia in the short term. Yeah, I think out of the four options that I mentioned earlier and the names that were sort of doing the rounds over the weekend, Phillips, Lavia, Gravenberch, and Amrabat, if I had to choose two of them, it would be Amrabat and it would be Lavia, just because Amrabat's 26, I think. He wouldn't cost the earth, so it's a deal that could get done quite quickly. And I think having him as a plug-and-play replacement for Fabinho is a good stopgap for 2 years. I think it's pretty much the same level in terms of where they're at. I don't think there's loads between them. They're very similar in terms of style as well. And it allows Bajcetic and Lavia to continue their development and to get bigger and to get stronger and to watch, etc. So, yeah, I think for me, out of those four names, now they're not the ideal four names, I grant you. Out of those four names, I would be going for those two personally. Yeah, and Ayush Rai basically says the same thing. Says Lavia's 19 at DM. We don't need a kid. We already have one. Yeah, Bajcetic. I agree, and I also think Nathan Weiss. I also think Bajcetic might end up being more of an 8 as well. I'm not convinced he's going to stay as a 6 forever, quite frankly. Anyway, yeah, let's talk about the actual news I was here to talk about. Liverpool have reportedly turned their attention to Crystal Palace midfielder Cheick Doucoure. Now, this comes from Football Insider, of course, as you can see, and it says Liverpool are exploring a potential move for the Crystal Palace midfielder Cheick Doucoure. It says the Merseysiders are drawing up a list of targets as midfield duo Henderson and Fabinho close in on respective moves to Saudi Arabia. And scroll a little bit further down, not that bit. It says a well-placed source has told Football Insider that Doucoure, who's 23, has been catching the eye of Anfield transfer chiefs. Nice wording. It's believed he could be signed to replace Fabinho in the defensive midfield role he made his own during his 5-year spell at Liverpool. It says the Mali international signed for Crystal Palace from Lens just last summer, got completely lost there, what I was saying, for a reported fee of 21 million. So, yeah, him as a player, let's talk about him as a player. Let's talk about if we fancy him or not, quite frankly. The price tag as ever is absolutely crucial in this. That report makes no mention of a price. I imagine they'd want more than that 21 million. He's obviously got a year of Premier League experience under his belt now as well. So, you'd imagine Palace wouldn't be letting him go on the cheap necessarily, but it does feel as though if a club of Liverpool's stature come in, then the player would be thinking, yeah, quite fancy a little bit of that. As ever, I checked out FBref to look at the players he was similar to stylistically, because that's my favourite thing to do in football. Manuel Locatelli was probably the most interesting name on that list. Obviously, had a really good, and I was really impressed with him in the Euros Italy won. Was it 18 months ago now? Maybe even nearly 2 years ago. I thought he was absolutely brilliant in that tournament, quite frankly. So he's one of the names, and also a familiar name to us there, of course, is Idrissa Gana Gueye. So I think from those, we can detect that he's very much a defensive midfielder, and his stats from last season also go some way to backing that up. I'll just get transfer market up. He's got 12 caps for Mali as well. He played 34 times in the Premier League last season, provided 3 assists, but look at that. All 35 of his appearances came as a DM. So when we talk about some of these options that we've been linked with in the past, like Ryan Gravenberch is a really good example of this. And Kefren Turan in some respects as well. People were saying he can play as a 6, he can play as an 8. Like Turan started out his life as a 6 and then moved further forwards. Gravenberch has played, I think it's like 30 odd games for Ajax as a 6, but predominantly plays as an 8. Cheick Doucoure is an out-and-out 6. like an out-and-out defensive midfielder. Now, whether you think that's what we need, that's up for debate. We can have our own conversations about that. But if we are looking for a genuine six and a genuine replacement for Fabinho, this lad will actually make quite a lot of sense when it comes to that. So yeah, anyway, what are we thinking? What are we saying? Let's have a look at some chats. Let's just scroll down. Jai 10. Why'd you do it to yourself? Can Barella play in the six? I think he probably could, certainly in a more possession-heavy base side, which I think we're looking to be with the box midfield. I think he probably could. Excuse me, but I don't think he's going to leave Italy. I've said it before. I don't think there's a world where you get him out of Italy. He's very, very into Milan through and through. I'd love to be wrong. I mean, Tonali was AC Milan through and through, and we've seen him very depressed walking around Newcastle. So perhaps, like, I think Liverpool will have made inquiries for Barella previously. Like, I very much imagine that's been the case, but I also very much imagine that the responses they've had haven't been particularly exciting because I don't think he's that keen on leaving, quite frankly. Listen, I could be wrong, and if Liverpool go for him, I'd love to see him playing for the Reds, of course, because I think he's a wonderful footballer, but yeah, I don't think so. And Remy Tonoy says, why have we forgotten Tyler Morton? I haven't forgotten him. For what role? Like, to replace Fabinho? To be his understudy? Like, I know I've already mentioned sort of Pacetic as his understudy and Romeo Lavia, and didn't, and therefore failed to mention Tyler Morton. But I don't know, he had a decent season at Blackburn on loan last year. I know the manager was very impressed. I think it's John Dahl Thomason, the manager there. He really liked him. He thought he had a really good year. He actually missed the end of the season with an injury. But yeah, what option? Like the third choice DM potentially, or is he sort of the ninth choice midfielder? I don't know. I'm not sure. I think another loan move, to be honest with you, would be better. Maybe a loan move. Somebody mentioned his injury there. I was just seeing it, just get past it. Maybe a loan move at the lower reaches of the Premier League for Tyler Morton, because we've seen him a little bit for Liverpool. I think we've seen him in that FC Porto game in the Champions League, but we haven't seen enough of him yet. And he had a good year in the Championship, but I think if he was to get football in the Premier League, that would sort of go further to telling us that he can do it and he is capable. Right now, I'm not sure myself. Eduardo Munariz, apologies for that surname pronunciation, that is horrendous. Doucoure is really good. Yeah, listen, I won't sit here and say I've seen loads of him. Obviously, I've seen bits of him when we played against Palace, of course, and I've seen bits of Palace last season, but I haven't seen an abundance of him play football. He ticks boxes in terms of his style. He looks physical enough to come in and replace Fabinho. Like I say, in terms of like-for-like replacement, I think he does make some sense. The fee would have to make sense as well. I'm just come off a conversation with Ian Doyle from Liverpool Echo, literally minutes before speaking to you guys, and unprompted, actually, Ian Doyle spoke about Cheick Doucoure. I was going to ask him, but I didn't need to. And I think he alluded to, and I'm paraphrasing here, he alluded to a potentially sort of 50 million sort of price tag for him, which, you know, if you look at it from the status of it's 40 million for Fabinho we could be getting, and you've just got to add 10 million to it, like that doesn't feel like the worst business in the world to me. Like, Liverpool will know better about the player and just how well he does fit. I'd like to think he's a good ball player as well, because I've had a quick look at his defensive stats and stuff like that, and his praises have been sung from that point of view. I seen a quote earlier on. It was from the Echo actually saying that he reads the game sort of seconds before it happens or something. So I think there's a talent there. I'd just like to see more of him before I make my own judgment on it, of course. Ollie Red has had an opinion as well. Ollie Red 99 says, I think I would rather Doucoure over Lavia. He did win Player of the Season with Palace and his stats look decent. Yeah, he did win Player of the Season with Palace. I think he won did he win one of the London awards as well? Because they have their own sort of London Footballer awards, don't they? Nathan Weiss, you're not giving this up, are you, mate? Well, I saved your blushes before by not bringing the comment up, but I'm not doing it again. Ward Prowse is worth a punt. Ward Prowse is worth a punt. So good, he said it twice. Or in this case, so wrong, he said it twice. Now, I'm not going to go as far as somebody who on the podcast said yesterday he was an absolute free kick merchant. I think he's better than that. I just don't think he's a Liverpool player. I'm sorry, I just don't. And I think previously, early this summer, Southampton were demanding something absolutely ridiculously eye-watering, like 50 million for him. Come on. Like, come on. I know they want that for Lavia, but Lavia is 19. He's a very, very exciting prospect. James Ward-Prowse is not an exciting prospect anymore. He's a good Premier League footballer, and I think he should probably move back to the Premier League, given that he's just been relegated, but not Liverpool. I'm sorry. Absolutely outstanding at free kicks. Good all-round player. Can play right back. Has played right back in the past. Like, I'm fully well versed on that. But I am fully not solved on the prospect of him becoming a Liverpool player as well. Dab_O says Doucoure lacks a bit of class. And that's something I was alluding to a minute ago in terms of, can he play as well? Like, yes, he's a tough tackler. Yes, he's physical. Yes, he gets stuck in. But can he play as well? I think we'd want to have sort of definite assurances on that in terms of having seen enough of a sample size of him to suggest that he can come in and he can fit into the system immediately. Oh God, there's a comment I thought I didn't want to see. Yo Cool says Hodgson taught him everything he knows. Yeah, that's a no from me then, quite frankly. Anybody taught by Hodgson? Do you mean me, Chris? Because that's not kind. I'm just a guy on the internet with a hat on talking about footballers. That's all I am. Or do you mean Doucoure? In which case, he's a 23-year-old footballer who plays for Mali and plays for Crystal Palace. Bizal says, can't we just keep them both? I assume you're referring to Fabinho and Jordan Henderson. And I would say no. Now, I personally would say no on both fronts. Fabinho looks like he's made it very abundantly clear that he wants to move on, given the fact he didn't go to Germany. And Henderson has also made it pretty clear that he wants to move on despite going to Germany. So, no, I don't think we keep him. I don't think we're keeping either of them, quite frankly. Another comment here is just coming up. Okafor Anamdi says, what of Edson Alcaraz? Is it Alvarez? It's Alcaraz. I keep getting mixed up with the tennis player, just won Wimbledon, of Ajax. Is he not off to West Ham? I felt like he was off to West Ham. But yeah, good player. Funny enough, just on the back of the conversation with Ian Doyle, he said Liverpool have done a lot of due diligence on midfielders in like the past 12 months because we've known we've needed one for a while. So although the Fabinho and the Henderson thing has kind of caught us off guard in terms of it wasn't part of the plan, we're in the best possible position to sort of rectify it because we're so well versed on so many different midfield options that there's a list somewhere. It might have been sort of tucked away, but there will be a list somewhere of midfield options that we will have looked at, will have discussed, will have scouted, etc., etc. So this quickly having to sort of rectify a window and going and getting one, hopefully two players, sort of in the blink of an eye, shouldn't be too difficult for us. I say that with all the hope in the world. And another one who falls into that category is actually the comment I brought on screen there. It's from S. Jim. So Team Coop Miner as well. Again, I've had a few conversations about him in the past, and people keep bringing him up. I think he actually would make a lot of sense for us. Again, it all comes down to what Atalanta would demand. But yeah, maybe, I don't know. There's so many names out there. I've seen about 15 different names. Here's another one now for you. Rob Davies. Rob Davies says, I reckon we will get a player from left field like Manu Kone. He doesn't play left field, mate. He plays centre mid. Sorry. He's injured at the moment, is the only thing I'd say on that. A while ago, early this window, it looked like we were really sort of hot on Kone and Thuram. French under 21 teammates, of course. But I watched the game where Kone got injured and went off on a stretcher, and I think he's out until the start of August. I think I'm right in saying. So, do we take a gamble on a player that's currently injured? How does he do his medical? Like, I'm aware that you can still get through a medical whilst injured, but it feels like a huge gamble, like a huge risk to me to sign somebody who's just got a bad knee injury. Yeah, I'm not in a world whereby we go and do that. I see in a moment ago somebody talking about Phillips as a possibility for 6. I just don't want Calvin Phillips. It doesn't excite me in any way, shape, or form. I can get more excited about Sofran Amrabat than I can Calvin Phillips. Given the lack of football he played last year, he's at Man City. He's not as young as people think. He's just been really injured. He kind of got called fat last year by Pep Guardiola. Like, forgive me for not being convinced by that one little bit. Positivity Zone, which is a name I can get behind, says McAllister and Trent can double pivot. Yeah, again, this got brought up a few times yesterday on the podcast, actually, with Paul, Chris, Chloe, and myself. McAllister Trent will be part of a double pivot. I'm pretty certain of it, having moved from right back into that position. And McAllister did do the double pivot a lot last year, certainly at the start of the season at Brighton before De Zerbi came in. And he did it alongside Caicedo, of course. He did it well, but it doesn't feel like that's his best position. And it feels like we've signed him for more of an advanced role than that, more like the role he sort of carried out for Argentina and the back end of the season for Brighton. Like that technical sort of making things happen type player, plays him over 10. We've given him the number 10. It doesn't feel to me like we're going to give the lad the number 10, having watched him at the World Cup and having watched him second half of the season for Brighton, and then say, oh, by the way, because our 6 has gone, do you mind dropping back? I don't think that's going to be the case. Listen, we've got Curtis Jones who could slot back into the role he's vacated potentially from McAllister. So possibly, but I don't know. I don't think so. Jennifer H with a comment on Tyler Morton. I think average could be harsh. He's just young. He's just not ready yet. I only bring this comment up because we often get called top reds at Redmen. And if I kind of dismissed the case of Tyler Morton becoming an option for Liverpool, does that mean we/I am not a top red then? Because if so, why have I just pinned that message? That was really stupid. I do want to bring it up, but I didn't want to pin it. Jason M asked, could Andy Robbo play the 6? I don't know what you're talking about. I guess he probably could, but we're sort of like one step away from when people say, could Joel Matip do it? And both answers are no. I think, and the answer to this, the COP Council is also no as well, funnily enough. I'll just bring your comment up. If we're in a world whereby we're looking at Joel Matip, Andy Robertson, or indeed Jay Spearing playing 6 for the first team, something's gone drastically wrong. And I don't want to sit here at any point in the next 12 months and have to watch, talk about, or endure that, quite frankly. And I like Jay Spearing. He's been in a few times. He's a good lad. But with all due respect, all the respect in the world, no. Just no. Anyway, super chat of €6 from Dave. And he's talking about another Dave. Dave O.C. Cop reported Caicedo will cost 75 million upfront plus 10 million in instalments. If we get 40 million for Fab, why not add that onto the Lavia budget and get Caicedo? Yeah, quite possibly. And obviously, if you get 10, 15 million, whatever you end up getting for Henderson, I don't think it's the worst idea in the world. The Caicedo thing's interesting because my initial reading of that situation when it was reported over the weekend wasn't really a money thing. And I actually think Brighton want more than that as well, to be honest. But let's just take that as read for now. It was more the fact that Chelsea was so far advanced with Caicedo in terms of probably personal terms and stuff like that, stuff that we don't potentially know about. So I don't know. A hijack attempt for Caicedo would interest me. Like I'd really want to see him at Liverpool, but yeah, I'm not convinced that we'll do it. And I guess the question is then, if you do lose Henderson and Fabinho, do you want 2 midfielders? Because if you go and get Caicedo plus maybe the defender that we still want to go and get, can you do all 3 in one swoop before the season starts? Stroke the window ends? I'm not convinced. I don't know. I'm really torn. Like part of me says, put the whole budget together and go and get a frontline option. Someone like Caicedo, someone like Tchouaméni, who I know has already dismissed the possibility he comes to Liverpool. Someone like Luis from Benfica. Go and do something like that because you need to. But on the other hand, you know, do you be more conservative? Bad choice of words. Do you be more? Yes, it is the word. I can't think of a better word to use it, so I'm going to use it. And go and get an Amrabat and a Lavia, and then sort of reassess the situation in 2 years' time when Lavia is probably ready to step up, and you can go and sort of do business elsewhere then as well. You can go and get your left-sided centre back, for instance. I don't know. There's so many different little twists to this. But listen, Dave, I think I actually make you right, and I think a lot of people are mentioning Sangare as well. The PSV, I think he's at, isn't he? He was heavily linked last summer, I think I'm right in saying, when we missed out on Tchouaméni. And I did a little bit of work on him then. And I don't know if he had the quality to come and do it for us, or even the mobility to come and do it. I think in terms of his physical prowess and his tackling and his aggression and his heading and his height and all that sort of stuff, I think he's got a lot. I'm just not sure he had the class to come in and do a job for us. But listen, I could be wrong. I could be wrong. Oh, by the way, Nathan Vice, absolutely. Bamalam, great comment, massively appreciated. What a load of nonsense. I know you're joking. Nathan Vice, do you think the whole Fabinho and Hendo saga was taken as a club by surprise, and we are now rushing to round to try and fill gaps, i.e., me saying Ward Prowse is worth a punt? Yeah, I do. Well, in fact, I don't think it. I'm pretty damn certain of it, quite frankly. I don't think this was part of our planning at all. I touched on it earlier. I felt like we were sort of quite happy, quite content with where we were at in terms of bringing McAllister and Szoboszlai in. And the Lavia stuff was just bubbling away underneath. And then maybe we'll go and do a defender as well. And all of a sudden, your whole plans are completely derailed and thrown into disarray by the fact that Saudi Arabia come calling with a big pot of cash for your captain. And they turn your head of your frontline DM as well, who we were definitely planning on going to the season with. So, yeah, it absolutely caught us by surprise. And it's all well and good being proactive in the transfer market, and Liverpool try to be as proactive as possible. But in this instance, we're going to have to be reactive, and we're going to have to do it well, because all of a sudden, what was like a really big rebuild has turned into an absolutely crucial rebuild. So yeah. Anyway, last few comments before I wrap up. Just want to check. Yeah, it's Troon Swig. You're right, mate. You're right on the point. But I think people were sort of alluding him to maybe more of a Henderson replacement, somebody a bit of a Swiss Army knife for a midfielder who can fit in and do a few different jobs. I wanted to read that comment about captaincy. How was that? Yeah, and I also agree with this. That's why out of the four names I mentioned earlier, mate, Rycro, Amrabat was running the World Cup and he's 17 his best player last season. Yeah, like I say, out of those four names, I'd get Amrabat because I don't think he'd cost the earth, and I'd get Lavia / Gravenberch, either one of them, as his understudy. Ibo Paul, Virgil van Dijk as new captain and Trent as vice captain. Yeah, possibly. Andy Robertson will be knocking on that door. I don't know. I think maybe, yeah, Andy Hall, me and you both. I think maybe Virgil van Dijk as captain looks like the most obvious one. Probably Robertson as vice captain. And then you just promote Trent up the leadership group a hell of a lot. Vice captain, if that's even a thing. Yeah, I think that would be the way I'd go about it personally, because I think you're sort of earmarking Trent as your future captain, then, aren't you? But yeah, Andy Hall, yeah, me and you both, mate. Me and you both. Another super chat from Hitchin Bars, top man. Thank you very much. Super chat, $4.99. Would it be possible to find a free agent to replace Fab in the short term? Maybe a Mendy, Bakayoko, or Traore? Yeah, possible. Absolutely possible. It's whether we think they're of the level to come in and do it. I wouldn't be convinced myself, but I suppose one way of doing that, to be a bit smarter about it, might be if you go and, I mean, you're sort of bordering on the Artemellos of this world there, aren't you? I know he was a loan, not a free agent, but you're not a million miles removed from it. He obviously looks like he's off to Fiorentina, by the way, ironically enough. But I think one way of doing that would be if you spend big on a Caicedo or a Tchouaméni or a Luis, for instance, you don't then go and get your Lavia or your Gravenberch. You go big on one and get a free agent for the other. So you can sort of rotate them too, and you can sort of maybe work it that way. But there is that. Listen, to come back to my earlier point, our plans have been so thrown off by what's going on in the past few days that I don't think anything is off the cards or off the table, rather. Even your James Ward-Prowse shout from earlier, Nathan Vice. Yeah, even that could be a possibility given what's gone on in the past few days. Anyway, I need to wrap up because I've got stuff to do. Quite frankly, I love speaking to you all. I really do. You're all amazing. LFC today, yeah, 100 million for Caicedo. They'll accept 100 million in installments, 70 up front. 70 up front is a lot of money in this day and age, by the way. A lot of money in this day and age, like too much. Not many clubs, so we've just done it with a Szoboszlai, but not many clubs spend 70 bang up front. Like, that's not done. Anyway, yeah, I do need to wrap up. Yeah, another bit of love for Sangare there. 25 years old, 6'3", runs all day, classier than Louise. Yeah, you're obviously convinced by him. Also, interesting shout from Otto Ferdinand. It says, bring back JJ Spirino to the first team. Yeah, good little player. Yeah, definitely think there's something in that. 811YT. Dan, do you think we should look at Steve Hall for the day? Do you know what, right? I only brought this comment up because it said my name at the start and it felt rude ignoring it. And now look what I've done. I want to leave because I've got stuff to do and I've just brought up this chat. Steve Hoare. I really like Steve Hoare, obviously, but come on. And he's back again with a double pivot shout with him and Neville. Good Lord. People mention Allison as a possible captain as well. Yeah, I think. Yeah, and also Allison's a great shout, by the way. But this Ollie Red, yeah, that's kind of what I alluded to when I said go and sign your frontline one, your Caicedo, your Tchouaméni, and then perhaps have a free agent as a backup option. You save a little bit of money that way, of course. No, Dabo Gravenberch isn't an out-and-out six. I think he's played 30 odd games for Ajax as a six, but other than that, he's pretty much played as an eight exclusively. I'm pretty sure I just seen a comment there. Let me just double check. Yeah, Dalipool. This is how I'm going to end because this is why I'm in such a rush. Yeah, are yourself or any of the Red Men heading to Germany? Yeah, thanks. I am. I'm leaving this office in about 40 minutes, and I've got a few more things to do. So without further ado, I need to leave. It's been a pleasure speaking to you, as always. Thanks very much for helping me along the way. Thanks very much for your comments. Even you suggesting James Ward-Prowse, and even you suggesting Jay Spearing. Yeah, hilarious stuff. I will see you all then on Friday. In the meantime, take care, and yeah, look after yourselves. See you later.
So all episodes of Bobby Firmino, Best in the World, our 3-part documentary series are streaming right now on redmenplus.com. Subscribers over there get access to the full series. They get the full interviews for our contributors on there, including Liverpool legends past and present. And if you go over there right now and join as a Club Legend yearly subscriber, in your inbox you'll receive 2 codes which are going to give you access to 2 free pieces of Bobby Firmino merch. Celebrate a Liverpool legend with your feet up on the beach this summer in style with some cool Bobby Firmino gear. Head to redmenplus.com and join as a Club Legend yearly subscriber.